Okay, hi guys. Thanks for joining first, and I'm sorry for the confusion. First of all, we are going to have an AMS session on basically data science and how it connects with marketing. Govind, can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so we have Arvind, who's the founder and CTO at Factors. Vineet, Anshul, and Govind are they basically do everything related to data science at Factors, and they'll be answering all your questions. But before that, we have structured the AMA in a certain way. Can you go to the next slide, Govind? Yeah. So we are basically going to give you an overview of how data science works in marketing. Like I said, it covers why data is difficult to measure. And then we are going to go out to typical data science pipeline, how it works with marketing and engineering processes. And at the end, we'll take any questions that you guys have. So I think I'll let Arvind take over now.
Hey, hello everyone. We'll start off with a brief overview of data science and what we do at Factors, just to set the context. But feel free to ask any question anytime whenever you have something, and also anything is fine. Like anything related to data science is fine as we talk. But we'll just start off with a basic overview so that we'll have some talking points to go ahead, right? So before we go into a generic view of data science, I'll just give an overview of what we do at Factors and how we do things differently, right? So Factors .ai is basically a marketing end-to-end marketing analytics product, right? In the sense that we take care of the entire full stack for marketing analytics, be it getting the data from various connectors, managing the data and kind of organizing, cleaning up and stitching the data in a data warehouse, and then allowing you to build reports and dashboards on top of this data the way you want, right? And we also allow you, I mean, we do allow in the traditional sense of having metrics and dimensions, having a view of the data as various metrics and dimensions from various data sources, and build your aggregated reports on top of that. But additionally, we also capture the entire user journey, from the first touch point on various page views to different stages in the CRM, and help you build out the complete journey at a user and account level, so that you can see various transition points and different funnels and how they move, and also enrich a custom a user level data with a lot of properties from different sources, be it uh, what industry, what's the company size, or what was the touch point, what was the first touch point, and so on. And so you have a complete view of data at a customer level, and allow you to build different kinds of reports on top of it, like funnels or multi-touch attribution reports on top of that, right? So it kind of tries to cater to all the marketing analytics needs at one place. The other thing that while you have an analytics product, right, you could always build dashboards and reports on top of it and be on top of your metrics. But if you want to do any ad hoc analysis, or if you want to do any if you want to figure out a way to optimize your metrics, or if you want to figure out why your metrics are moving in a certain direction, why it's increasing or decreasing, or want to get a root cause of anything, it is a very tedious task. You need to actually get to you need to actually come up with your hypothesis and then slice and dice the data. There are only so many ways you can slice and dice the data, because it's a manual and tedious process. There's only so many questions you can ask and wait for it to come. And generally, it's not done to the extent that we think it needs to be done, right? Because there's a lot of information data, and that doesn't get kind of uncovered in your day-to-day marketing needs. So at Factors, what we have done differently is that we build a lot of pre-computed models on top of this data, and make this process of search automated and very fast, right? It won't scale in a traditional BI sense, but we build models on top we continuously build models on top of this data, and then help you kind of slice and dice the data very fast, and automatically surface the best correlations for to improve your metrics, or to figure out why your metrics are changing. So that's a very high level view of how we use data science at Factors. I'll hand it over to Govind to kind of and the rest of the team to dive in into more details of both data science in general and also some examples of what we do at Factors and how we apply it. All right, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Arvind. Hi, I'm Govind. Let's start with our main agenda. So the main agenda is to understand how we make friends with our data. I mean, the topic says befriend your data, right? But why is it so difficult to deal with data in the first place? So there's an old saying of big data, which is quite old now, but it still is relevant in today's world, which is the three V's of big data: the volume, the velocity, and the veracity of data. Now, volume simply pertains to the amount of data that you have. Velocity pertains to the speed with which data changes. And finally, veracity is what something like marketing analytics. In marketing analytics, we are focused towards finding truth from data. What is right and what is not right, or for example, what to focus upon. That's the veracity angle of data. Now, giving all of this marketing perspective would be a typical marketing data would have millions of customer data points and hundreds to thousands of properties or dimensions. And that's the volume part. From the velocity side, changes in trend, daily, weekly, monthly, for example. Not only is the data high in volume, but it is fast moving, for example. By the time we are done analyzing the data and making decisions, the trend has already changed. So that's the second hurdle to cross when we talk about anything related to data. And last, but the most important one is what you want from your data on, say, a daily basis or a weekly basis, which is insights. There are hundreds of layers of information that remain stored within the data. And to mine them is the main goal of a marketeer. Now, some of it could be more interesting than others, some of it could be more true than others, and so on. So for example, if you want to mine the top 10 pieces of information that your data gives you, say daily, those are the three pain points with respect to data. A typical data science pipeline, not just marketing, but in general, consists of these four modules broadly. You first process data, then you create relevant features out of it, and in the end, you build machine learning models. Now, once a model is built, it is used for prediction and for explanation. Now, let us look at these steps one by one, and then we'll open the floor to questions. Raw data, for example, needs processing. So just as you pre-process your food before you start cooking it. So this involves many usual operations such as, for example, Arvind mentioned about slicing and dicing your data. So even before you start doing that, you filter your data, you do a lot of aggregations on your data. And there are some standard cleaning operations as well, for example, handling missing values or say outliers. So this is something that every data science practitioner does so that they have clean data to start with. Okay. And then the second step, which is features. Now, features are the language that both humans and machines communicate with. Although programming is the language, but with respect to data, if you have to feed in data to your system, you have to bring the data to a feature level. And that's how your machine understands it. And also when the machine does something on that data, you have to understand it back. So that's the to and fro information sharing that happens through features. So a typical feature processing step would start with some exploratory data analysis, and then you start to reduce dimensions of your data in such a way that you only have the relevant ones there. But the ultimate goal is to understand what these features are. For example, are they discriminative, informative enough? Now, there are some great tools that are available from probability, from mathematics, information theory, and so on. That was, in general, how a feature processing pipeline would look like. But to illustrate feature engineering further, Vinith would share some examples that we work on at Factors. Vinith, over to you, please.
Hi everyone. So yeah, at Factors, probably I give a very high level view on what we do. So as everyone knows that we collect a lot of data from multiple channels, whether it be HubSpot, Facebook, Google, uh, Salesforce, and what we do is like we try to bring a single view of all the of each customer's data. So for each customer, we try to stitch all these properties data from multiple sources and bring it into a single view, and we do it time and again for every other customer. Now once we have a complete understanding of a single customer, and we aggregate this knowledge across customers, what we can do is like what we get is like we get a complete understanding of the journeys, the touch points, I mean, the journeys of each customer and why they are converting, how they are converting. So at a high level, this is what we do at Factors. And when we what we try to collect here is like we have a lot of categorical data, categorical properties like the geography of the customer, the timeline, the time he actually spends in the product. So and then we also have so these properties are of actually multiple values. One, some are actually categorical, so these are something like you'll have country from India, US, Europe, everything. And there are also time based properties like how much time they are spending on the page, when they are coming in, when they are going out. And also we also collect the journeys, the page views. And what happens is like when we collect, there'll be a lot of noise when we are collecting all this data, and we have to find a way to clean the data, generate meaningful. Actually, after cleaning, we try to generate a meaningful view of a customer by filling in missing values. If there are some data which is like completely out of range, probably his IP might actually show he is in US, but all his customer related information might show that he is in India. So what we do is like we try to actually aggregate it, clean it, find, make it as good as possible so that the ML algorithm can find good insights in it. And then we also have a lot of, as I said, we have a lot of ordinal and cardinal data. So all these things require actually binning. So we have data for every second, and we cannot give such data to our algo. So what we do is like we try to discretize it for per day or per hour. And then we try to bring a single view of a customer, and then we do this for each and every customer and give it to our algo. Yeah, next slide.
Okay, sure, sure. Thanks, Vinith. Vinith would come back for an example for this as well. Let me just introduce this. So the third step, which we discussed, once the models are successfully built, uh, which is once we have our features, as for example, Vinith described, the first goal is to predict from them, which means that uh, 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 to be able to predict from models, you have to first create models, right? And that's the main step, which is model building. Now, that's also called model training. And a model is nothing but a setting of parameters, which means parameters that would describe how these features interact with each other. And ultimately, they have to fulfill our goal of predicting some value of of a particular metric of interest, for example, some kind of a North Star metric. Now, depending on whether we have structured or unstructured data, we might select from a different, suite of different algorithms, such as random forests or neural networks. And there are, hundreds of such algorithms available for multiple different kinds, and they have their own pros and cons. Uh, some typical tasks that you might have heard about, or might have been working with, are, say, hyperparameter tuning or backpropagation, regularization, optimization, and all of these tasks are the typical day-to-day in a data science kind of a pipeline. Now, I would again invite Vinith to illustrate how models are built at Factors. Vinit?
Uh, yeah. So at Factors, what we try to do is uh, we are actually building models which generate insights. So basically, we try to count. So we the data we are using is all the events, the page view data for each customer, and each of these page view data will come with a lot of properties. As a marketers, you guys know it comes with a lot of properties, and each property generally it has a very high level of cardinality when you actually aggregate it across all customers. So customers can be from different states, different countries, different geographies. They can have different pin codes. Each of them actually contribute to a very each of them will have a very high cardinality. And now what we do is, like as I said, we filter out all this unnecessary noise and try to come out with a very clean view for a customer. And when we actually build models, what happens is our models try to, so as a human, as humans, we are actually tuned to finding patterns in single columns or two columns or three columns. But what makes pattern mining difficult is like when you have hundreds of columns for each customer, and now you want to find a relation between each of these columns where there are multiple interactions, and all these interactions also can occur across customers. That's where it becomes interesting, and that's where our machine learning techniques actually come in. So the, so as a so generally we use something called frequent pattern mining. Frequent pattern mining is like a technique to capture the interaction between multiple properties and how they actually describe some particular event. So what we do is, like, for one particular event we have a lot of properties, and by applying this algo we try to aggregate, we try to bring out some kind of insights which actually describe why this property, why this event has actually occurred. And when we're actually counting, we use a lot of properties, and actually there'll be something called a combinatorial explosion. So there'll be a lot of different combinations. And by using ML, what we do is, like, we try to cut down on all these combinations, choose the best combination which can actually explain why something is happening, or explain the correlation and the causality of some particular event. And there might be like multiple reasons why a particular event or something might have happened. There might be like a lot of insights that get generated from FP algos. What we do is, like, we rank them and find what is the best explanation that is possible, and we try to actually give it to you. Yeah, probably the next slide.
Thanks, Vinit. So this brings us to the last step in a typical model building exercise, which is to predict from these models. Now, for example, if we have built a model to predict CVR, which is the conversion rate, which is the ratio of people who converted versus the people who visited, say, a particular website. Now, we feed in live data and try to predict the conversion rate from a model. Now, we have already built a model that could predict conversion rates, for example. But then building a model is not the ultimate task. The ultimate task is to have live data with us and predict from the model. And that is where the what of it lies, which means what would be the CVR, for example. Now, we are also interested in why a model predicts something that it predicts. So why has the model predicted a particular conversion rate it has done? And we would want to break the model down. The model would break itself down in terms of the components or the logic, quote unquote logic that it had used to come up with that decision, for example. And we have Anshul here to illustrate this for us, for example, with things that we do at Factors. But yeah, this is in general. Anshul, over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Govind. Hi, all. So at Factors, now that we have processed our data and kind of have it in a place, we have trained on the data. Now we need to get some results from it, some explanation from it. So at Factors, what we do is, suppose you like choose a goal, you want to know things around that particular goal. Then like say you need to know about people who submitted a particular form. So at Factors, what we do is we obviously give you the CVR of the people who actually submitted the form, but we can actually we we tell you like how what events are actually influencing that form. The people who have actually submitted the form, from which state is the majority of those people arriving, from which site are they actually converting to actually submitting the form. These kinds of insights can be given by us at Factors, and you can actually see further into, like, there's a multi-level insight thing. So if a majority of people are coming from a particular state, among those people, how are they distributed? How are they leading there to the submit the form actually? So that's what we do at Factors. We use kind of a variant of a decision tree to actually pick out the insights which are relevant to your goal, to the particular goal we have chosen. We kind of filter the insights which actually are relevant, and yeah, that's what we do.
Okay, yeah. So Anshul, yeah, that was a great explanation of both inference and explainability. Although at Factors, because it really depends from business to business, and although there are some marketing analytics problems which are prediction oriented, where you do inference per se, but then sometimes you may have to, just work with explainability, because that's what the main pain point is. Although there are, predictive analytics where you want to predict something that might happen in the future and then find why it would happen, or you could work in a retrospective way of looking back and then maybe explaining that. All right, so that brings us to the end of the presentation from our side, and this was just to set some context. And although the goal was not to give a complete end-to-end overview of marketing analytics, there is so much more or maybe a lot of questions that you all might have. So please do not hold your questions in terms of the context that we have set. We may not have exactly set the context, but feel free to ask any questions that pertain to data science and specifically to marketing with respect to data science. So I would now hand over to Priyanka so that she could conduct the rest of the session.
Thanks, guys. It was a great presentation. Do you guys have any questions? You can feel free to switch on your mics and post your questions, or you can always type in on the chat and I'll take it up. Anything that's comfortable with you all.
Hey, hi Priyanka. So maybe I'll just go first. So yeah, thanks for this session. So it's been pretty useful in terms of how in general the things work in terms of between the marketing analytics. So my question here is, see, basically my job role involves managing the paid ads. So I do both primarily Facebook ads and then Google ads at my org. And now I would like to understand how we could able to bring a predictability model to understand how we can do lead forecast. Because what we do at my daily job is, let's say for every day, like what should be the lead requirement for my sales team on the next day. And when there is like 20% or 30% drop in my lead gen numbers on next day, there's a severe momentum dip that gets happening after a week or so. So is there any use case or suggest how we approach, or is it possible to build a model where we have the past data of marketing Facebook data and then go about in predicting how many leads we will able to get? And here the changing factors will be mostly the budgets. So sometimes we run at like 50,000 INR a day, sometimes it goes up to 1 lakh INR. So considering all these variabilities, will we still able to predict a decent accuracy in this case?
Yes, Arvind, go ahead.
Just to get more context on the question. So what you're saying is that you have campaigns running every day and you have budgets allocated to each of these campaigns, right?
Right.
But some days you get a lot of impressions, clicks, and leads. Other days you don't get as many impressions, clicks, and leads, right?
Correct. Yeah, the variability between the impressions, when my impressions goes down itself, eventually my leads also will go down. So
Okay.
I see if I should tell in technical terms, we have the CPM metric, cost per thousand impressions. So that keeps changing. Uh, I mean, it goes unpredictable, at least in my case, what I understood. So sometimes it will be like 120 rupees and sometimes it goes up to 200. So I'm just thinking if we can, how do we understand this predictability for this use case?
Yeah, I mean, I think predictability of in general the bits that you get and the leads you might get uh, from Google or from Facebook is a hard problem. Meaning, it depends a lot on the market conditions. There is a lot of seasonality in the way people bid on different terms, and also, like for example, in December, I think end the bids would be lower, and for the same budget, the number of people searching would also be lower, and so on, right? So, so that the, to predict those numbers, you might not even have the data for it, right? So that will be a hard problem. But what can be done is, in general, you could look at a past performance, right? And assuming that you have a similar performance or in the same range, like of a certain variance, you could try to figure out a budget allocation scheme that will maximize the number of leads you can get, and also give you a prediction of the number of leads that you can get, and try to bring in various factors. But having said that, it's still an interesting problem to actually see if somebody has all the past data on how, in general, the bids and the impressions share or search move across different domains and so on, and kind of factor into that into your, what do you say, planning and other needs.
Right, yeah. So what we try to do in high level is we try to understand at least the patterns, what's happening between week on week. In certain days, example on Friday on Friday and Saturday, we see CPMs going high. So that one we are factoring it quite manually. So yeah, so that's what we have been doing at the moment.
Got it. And just to understand, how do you actually figure out how to allocate the budget? Like, let's say you have three campaigns, right? Campaign A, campaign B, campaign C, right? And one is giving, let's say, a CPA of 300, others giving CPA of 400, and others giving CPA of 500, right? Uh, so in this case, and you have, let's say, $10,000, right? How do you decide where to put the campaign? I mean, do you use any techniques to actually figure out the allocation problem of to get a certain number of leads?
So it's not something that we do every day. So so based on our weekly performance and understanding between campaigns, how much variations we have been getting in terms of conversion rate and what is the volume of leads we'll be needing. So we'll try to balance that two numbers and go with the budgets. So basically, I would say the conversion rate is what we factor in, and even though our CPO is quite high, if the conversion is still high, we will plan our budgets accordingly. But overall, the more variations that happening is between the leads, because one day our sales team requirement, let's say, sometimes close to 500 leads per day, sometimes it's only 300. So in that case, it gets extremely tough when we largely shut down campaigns, and when like after 2 days when it turn on the campaigns, our cost is going high. So those things are happening. I mean, it's a long way to solve all those things, but factoring this is what we are doing. Budget allocation lastly, I mean, mostly it happens based on number of leads we need at one end on everyday basis, and we are trying to balance it over the week's time, how much converts we are expecting in terms of paid orders. So that's where we are factoring in our budgets and for both leads and converts.
Arvind, I might have a couple of inputs on this. Govind here.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Karthik, yes. So basically, as Arvind was suggesting, there are a few factors like seasonality factors which you won't be able to capture because that might not be even present in your data. But then there are some factors which you can capture, as for example, Vinith had mentioned factors like demographic features and all of that. And for example, what browser are these users coming from, or what location are they coming from, and for example, what OS are they using, and so on. Now, there are a few tried and tested techniques as well. For example, there is reinforcement learning specifically for budget allocation. So I was working in ad tech in the past. I was not directly involved in the project, but what people do is they for example have a reinforcement or a semi-supervised learning kind of a model, where you start with a particular budget which is set by hand, and then you involve the machine to set some parameters. So for example, you try setting some parameters this month or maybe this week, and then next week you look at the performance, and then based on that you change these parameters, and there are models to do that. So one of that which I could quickly give away to you is multi-arm bandits. So you can solve it as a multi-arm bandits problem. But then there are so many other things here as well. I mean, if you have enough retrospective data with you and you are sure that the data, the patterns keep repeating themselves, and it is reliable data, then you can go with a partly supervised and a partly unsupervised model. But yeah, what really makes sense is if you can identify what are the features, and that's the first step. And the second step is what is your goal. So for example, if you keep changing your goals, one day your goal could be CPM, the other day your goal is to increase the number of leads, someday your goal might be to increase the decrease the cost, for example. So when you change goals, your model might need changes. So maybe, yeah, I mean, the rule of optimization saying that you have to have a single goal which you want to maximize or minimize, and you can have parameters like alpha, beta, which you can assign to all of these goals, and then the way you change these parameters, you can prioritize one of these goals. And for example, and then again you have things like scalability. If you want to scale, or for example increase the audience, you would have a some particular kind of ads which would which would be tagged as scalability oriented ads, and they would be low spend but reach kind of ads. So I think you have to build these modularized system where you really know what the features are, what the goals are, and how can you combine these goals to come up with a single goal. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey Karthik, this Vineet here. So just to understand more about the problem. So are you trying to understand the features which actually influence, or are you trying to solve the problem given that you already have a lot of features and you just want to do some kind of a forecasting?
So the thing I want to solve is the forecast. So how do I forecast, like if I keep
Okay.
50,000 INR per day, will I be able to get this number or not?
Yeah, so there are actually multiple factors which influence your problem. But if at all you're looking for some tools to actually solve it, there's a wonderful tool called Profit by Facebook. Govin can actually show it in your screen. Can you just search for Profit Facebook?
Okay, yeah, so I have only shared my one tab, but let me see if I can share that. Just 1 minute.
It's a very good tool for forecasting where you want to bring in seasonality, understand which factors actually influence your campaigns. It's used by Facebook, by the Facebook team, marketing team actually, and it was built for the Facebook marketing team. Profit Facebook,
Perfect, right?
Facebook or Meta actually. Yeah. And
Okay.
the tool is actually very simple to use. The only issue is like you have to identify good features which actually influence your question. Probably, even if you don't understand the interaction, probably you can actually give in as much as data into this tool, and it will try to give some good insights for you. And the tool is actually very easy to use, and you can actually look at the tutorials to. I think the tutorial contains a lot of marketing problems, so you can actually look at it to how to use this.
Okay, great. Yeah, yeah, I will explore this for sure.
Thanks, Karthik, for your question, and thanks, guys, for your inputs. Is there any other question that we can take up? If there's any, you can put it on the chat. Just that I had some of general questions that maybe I can take up until there's any other question from the participants. So how do you guys decide which data science technique or algo to use for a given task?
Anshul, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hi. So it really kind of depends on what your goal and data is, like how your data is oriented. It kind of depends on a lot on which technique you would use, what relationships you are actually kind of expecting your data to have. It kind of, you have to factor in all that. What goal, what are you trying to find out? It kind of involves all that to choose a particular technique to actually solve something. And
Yeah, so actually that
Yeah.
reminds me of this. I mean, that three problems in machine learning, right? The top three. I mean, supervised learning, unsupervised, and reinforcement based learning.
Yeah.
So if Priyanka is referring to those kind of maybe discussions, then yes. So the first goal is to map the problem at hand to one of these problems. And then that
Yeah.
decides whether we'll go ahead with, say, for example, classification or regression.
Yeah, true. That's correct. So yeah, so first you'll have to decide what, as Govind said, which way would you want to go. Supervised would be looking at a previous data and then working on that to actually get some insights. There's an unsupervised thing where you can just, you are getting some data and you're kind of clustering your data and finding some results. Then there's the reinforced thing, which can be a kind of a supervised thing. So yeah.
Right. Okay. On the same lines, we heard about classification, regression, and supervised learning, but there are unsupervised and reinforced learning algorithms as well. So, how do you basically use them into marketing analytics in a specific manner?
Govind, would you like to take that?
Yeah. So yeah, that's true that when we talk about retrospective data, for example, the kind of behavior that we see with a particular data set, now that comes to, say, for example, talking about marketing data, the goal or the target is to find leads or people who are likely to convert, or some kind of an audience modeling. So once we have that specific goal with us, the second task is to ask this question, that whether that goal is a numeric goal or is it a categorical goal. If it's a categorical goal, like convert versus no convert, or click versus no click, or if you talk about, say, although there is a fine line between marketing and sales, but then if you talk about a goal like what would be the percent sales increase next month. Now, percent sales increase is not a categorical variable, it's a numerical variable. So when you have such specific goals in your mind, then you are in the range of supervised learning, where you could take it as a classification problem or a regression problem. But when you do not have a very specific goal in your mind, but you have data, and now you know that this data has a lot of information, but you do not have a specific target in your mind, then you can start analyzing the data and use something. And something that helps you analyze data is unsupervised learning, for example, clustering or topic modeling or even dimensionality reduction. So one very interesting use case of clustering is market segmentation. So if you have a product and you want to release it, or for example, if you want to release ads in the market, now how many ads to release, and what kind of ads should they be, what kind of market segments should these ads focus upon. Now, one way of segmenting the market could be very simple, manual segmentation, that this product, for example, there is a product, a product, say, biscuit or a chocolate. Now there could be multiple buyers of this product, right? In multiple locations or multiple age ranges. So based on location or based on age range, you can always segment this data. But then if there are some 10 or 15 different variables on which you want to segregate your market, then you use something like clustering. Now, then comes questions as, how many market segments or how many clusters do you want from the data? So you can keep going, and that's where unsupervised learning kind of helps. Yeah, reinforcement learning has its own applications where if you want to train something in terms of a quick reward, that you build a model today and keep some parameters flexible, and then you keep learning those parameters every day or every week based on what did you see here, and you do not really worry about the retrospective data, and you, for example, you do not really have to store all the retrospective data with you, but you want to learn in a streaming fashion. So that's what you call as supervised, semi-supervised or a reinforcement learning based solution. Yeah, that is it from my side.
Okay, got it. Is there any question from the participant side? Maybe Likith or anybody else?
No, I just asked my question, so I renamed it. It was some Karthik name. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So I had this one generic question that's always under general discourse as well, is that can automatic analytics ever match the level of manual insights that we get? How do you capture the human essence to it and the intuition to it? Can machine ever replace that in marketing analytics terms, of course?
I would be very interested in listening to Vinith's answer on this.
Yeah, please.
Okay. From assuming that you're using machine learning techniques or probably supervised, unsupervised, humans have their own limitation. Yes, humans can actually, the level of insights generated by humans are actually, if you consider that as a topmost, the same level of insights can be generated using a machine. And not only that, the same level, they can actually generate, they can look at a number of combinations. It can actually look at a multiple, very high number of combinations compared to what humans can actually look at and make inference. So machines, when they generate so many insights, how they generally match a human level insight generation is like when actually humans start using those insights. There are ML techniques which will start learning what kind of insights, what kind of knowledge a human wants to use it, and probably they try to learn from it and they try to match the human. I mean, if I have to build a system which has to actually match a human in generating insights, then probably I know ML algorithms which can actually generate so many insights. What I do is I let the human use it so that the algo can actually learn from the human what kind of insights they're looking at. And at some point of time, you will see that both will actually start converging. And once the convergence happens, probably a human level insight generation is possible. What is not possible is like the explanation. Probably we can show what are the variables that are influencing, but I think it's still not a solved problem where the way a human can actually explain the causality. I don't think any other technique or algo is still matching that part. So I think explainability part is still far-fetched. We are solving it to an extent, but still there's like a lot of way to go. I mean, a lot of milestones to reach. And compared to that, the generation part, I think we are more or less done. And the kind of things we do here at Factors is probably the right, in my opinion, it's like the way to go actually when we want to try to match a human level insight generation.
Yeah, so I think, Vinith, what you're saying is that these models, when worked along with humans, with proper kind of a human machine, human in the loop kind of feedback system, they can really perform well. So the
Yeah,
best
at one point of time, they both will actually converge, probably because the humans can actually choose the best insights, and machines can actually generate all the probably all the possible insights, even though it's an NP-hard problem. But
right.
they can actually generate as many insights as possible. So only problem there is actually choosing the best insights, which they can learn
I
from
think
humans.
that really goes well with all these applications. Like, for example, we see recommendations on Netflix, and the way those are generated are by looking at our own pattern of
Yes,
viewing them.
that's why machine learning actually comes in. That's a learning part of machine learning.
Hmm. Okay.
Right.
Yes. So yeah. So basically, correlation is not causation, right? And you want causal insights, right? But every causal influence will have a correlation, right? So it boils down to how can you choose the best correlations which are causal in nature, and show it to the end user, right? And in those terms, a few things. One is, as you said, as Vinit said, a human actually giving feedback can help us understand that which ones are actually causal and which ones aren't. Other is you already have expert knowledge. If the data set is standardized, as in we have it, like we have marketing data, we know that there's a touch point, there's a campaign, and this campaign has an influence on conversions and so on, right? So you already have expert knowledge on what do you say, what has a causal influence and what doesn't have a causal influence, and you could kind of prioritize those insights over the other ones, rather than kind of looking data in a very completely agnostic way. Like I mean, it's very hard problem if you don't know what the data is, like. But in a marketing sense, you can actually have like a templated way of actually figuring out or reprioritizing some of the insights to get the best ones at the top.
Right. Got it. So maybe we can take one last question, if there's any, or I'll go with my question. If there's any question from the participants, we are more than happy to take it. Okay, so I assume there's none from the participant side. So there are types of data that we sort of stitch together to give a story. What types of data are majorly used for marketing analytics, and how do you stitch sources like CRM channels, etc., and integrate them into saying a certain story that we do at Factors? And yeah, that's, I just want to know the engineering part of it, like how, what goes on, what's the thought process behind that.
Arvind and Vinit, I think any one of you should be taking this.
Vinit, go ahead.
Yeah. So as such, we currently get data from HubSpot, Salesforce, Facebook, Google. We also have our SDK in each of the pages. So we capture all the touch points for a single customer. The issue comes in like how we actually combine all the data. We do have a primary key to actually combine as much as data as possible. So whenever we have a customer ID, which actually uh, collates all the data into a single view, and yeah, I mean, this is how we are stitching it. But yeah, I'd like to hear from Arvind too.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, I don't know much to add. Thanks.
Okay, sure. I think we can end our session right now if there's no question. Thank you guys for joining, and we will circulate the recordings on the Luma platform and wait for it when this transcript comes out, and we'll publish it as a blog. So yeah, thank you guys for joining. I'll stop the recording right now.